City council members have announced their plan to disband the Minneapolis Police Department.
We're calling for defunding the police.
Shootings in New York City have more than doubled this year.
This is the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. My name's John. I'm a dispatcher in the field, have been for about 8 years. I was a correctional officer before that, which I like to think counts for something. Hosting this show is Detective Andrew Baxter, formerly of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department. He has almost 30 years of experience. So now we're going to break down a case going on out in Los Angeles County, California. Seems like there's some controversy out there. Seems like there's a small anti-police sentiment out there. This shocking development is what brings us here tonight. Drew, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. A few corrections, a few very minor corrections. Almost 29 years, 28 and change, 28 years and 11 months. First of all. Second of all, I served.
I took off the time you spent sleeping in the car. Sorry.
Okay, so 26 years. So I served as a detective. I retired as a lieutenant. That's a big deal, John. And then also, what was the other thing? So you'll know, I started, in case you didn't know this, John, I started as a dispatcher. I served for 2.5 years or so. And then I went into the field of law enforcement, and I had a wonderful, robust career. And towards the end of my career, I returned to run the same comm center that I started in. It's undergoing several changes, personnel changes, like at the top right now. It's kind of in turmoil. You know what? I really would like to discuss briefly, because I said this to you earlier. When I came back to the comm center, when I did, the thing that I noticed about working in that environment is that, and I always joke about this, the only thing that really changed was the paint and some of the technology, and not even all of the paint. It was a wretched situation in the sense that the citizens are still mean to the call takers. The cops are still relatively mean and dismissive of the call takers. But even worse, it's a trauma-filled environment where nobody trusts one another and knives and daggers come out. So therefore, the dispatchers tend to turn on each other, and it's a sad environment. It's a product of post-traumatic stress, in my personal opinion and in my research. I firmly believe that, but there is a sense of decorum that can be, let's say, maintained with proper leadership or with just being good human beings, and perhaps like not ganging up on somebody and not bullying them, and not being a bully supervisor or bully manager, or not being cliquish is quite popular in big comm center communities. I have to thank Melanie Owen for this first time super chatter. Melanie has put up a $20 super chat. Thank you for that. Keep up the great work, guys, she says. And you know what? If any of you want to throw a little bit of money in the hat, you feel free to do that. You just you tap that super chat button, but and dig deep. But I would just like to say it is an environment rife with a little bit of backstabbing here and a little bit of hey, check out so and so social media. Did you see what they put on there? There's a little snitchery going on. Definitely a lot of worrying about other people's business. And I just wish the environment would clean up a little bit in that sense. I'm not trying to talk down to anybody. I'm just trying to talk facts, to be honest. And to be frank, I've had text conversations and DMs from people, some I know, some I don't, who say the same thing, that they're being bullied, or that they're, and that's not a term I use loosely, or that there are too many clicks up in a comm center environment. And I wish we could all kind of just come together, because we are trying to serve the same purpose. But I do understand that it's an aquarium up there. It's four walls, and you can't, you're going to go stir crazy. You're going to get on each other's nerves. But that's why I just wish the little things, the administrators of these large law enforcement agencies would pay attention to the little things, like giving them a quiet room, or throwing a golden retriever up there every once in a while. Just give them something nice, and a nice break room. Acknowledge them, give them get them engaged in the process, because that's all they want. They just want to be heard. So speaking of being heard, John, you have 10 seconds to be heard. Go.
It's not just having an admin that
I'm sorry, your 10 seconds are up. We are going to go to our first news story. No, go ahead, John. I'm sorry. I was bullying you.
I know what it's like to be bullied. I've been on camera with you since an hour ago.
Oh, that's so true.
No, it's not just having an admin that takes care of you. Of course, there's certainly that, and most dispatchers will have their complaints about admin. But my boss famously said, and this is something I brought up a long time ago in episode 2, that that we have huge gaps of employment in telecommunicators or dispatchers, whatever your term may be, all across the country. And the reason for that is that a lot of times we just no matter amount of pay or acknowledgement or pizza parties or golden retrievers, frankly, can compensate for the amount of disrespect that we often have to put up with our partner agencies. I'm talking police officers, I'm talking firefighters, EMTs, tow truck drivers, anybody that we really have to partner with. And between them and the disrespect they could show us sometimes and the public, it puts you in a situation where despite being the very tip of the spear of the law enforcement effort, the person that gathers the intelligence, who gets all the critical information out there to the people who go out there and do the dirty work and save lives and put out fires, we're made to feel very second rate and little more than secretaries. So this show is kind of founded on the principle that maybe we could boost the esprit de corps of dispatchers and show what we do in the field to be the main engine of public safety. Drew, my 10 seconds are up. Back to you.
I promise you, having been in both environments, the fine people in the communication center take the beatings for everybody else. They really do. I wouldn't say that just to say it. I wouldn't say that to garner sympathy for them, because they don't ask for anything. And sometimes the sad part about this is sometimes they just don't realize that they deserve more respect than they're getting. And that's kind of the purpose of this show, John. That's why we retooled our intro to get people to understand what we're doing here. We're giving dispatchers a voice, although I keep talking over you. I just want to acknowledge 2 podcasters in the we got a podcaster in the house. We're going to be talking to Daniel Carr from Police Law News, one of my favorite accounts on Instagram. He's also got a robust TikTok account. He is not a practicing attorney, but he has graduated law school. He's also a detective from a large agency in the southwestern United States, which is why John has decorated his motif with the southwestern theme, as you can see. He has a TP set up on the other side of his lights. And we're going to talk to Daniel about a very controversial case. In the chats tonight, we have Abby from On Being a Police Officer, who's our mainstay. She is our like the big sister that we all love. She has taken us under wing. She did a brilliant episode with someone by the name of Catherine Boyle, who runs an Instagram page or an account called The Lieutenant's Daughter. It's way more than that. I really encourage you to go to On Being a Police Officer and listen to what the conversation between Abby and Catherine. Catherine's doing the Lord's work. She literally is a lieutenant's daughter, and she's an anomaly in the sense that she was a cop's kid, but she never really understood like the depth of what the cops go through, because her dad was so good at just being a father and not bringing that home with him, if it makes sense. It's a compelling story, and the things that Catherine is doing are amazing. And she also had a cousin who was killed in the line of duty. Also, we have another friend of mine, a show that I was on called Things Police See, Firsthand Accounts. That was a great podcast I was on. And welcome to the chats. And please, everybody, make everybody else feel comfortable. Give each other a hug. This would be the point in the church service where the minister would stop everyone and make you all stand up and shake hands and hug one another. John? Oh, take your mic off.
Oh, rookie mistake. We call that greeting time, obviously. I just wanted to get my news out of the way so that we can move on to an otherwise excellent program. Right. I have a couple names we have to add, sadly, to our list of Among the Stung. Unfortunately,
Mm.
Will Cray was viciously and repeatedly stung by wasps, and all over his face. The doctors say he may never again have a human face. So prayers go out to Will Cray. We think about you and the person that you were, good looking as you used to be, and we know that you cannot recover. We know that you will not try. Your spirit having been defeated by thousands of swarming bees. Also, Teresa Kay, a stalwart of the Wolf
Oh
Pack.
no.
Teresa was she is now on an iron lung because she is on Obamacare, and that is the best you can get for a bee sting when you are on
Yeah.
Obamacare. So thoughts and prayers go out to Teresa as she recovers heavily sedated with animal tranquilizers, and we hope that someday you will even want to come back to the waking world. I also got a message today from a brave police officer in California who was dispatched to a van that struck a pole that was actually a secret base for hornets and wasps, and
Whoa.
the entire vehicle was swarmed with hornets and wasps. And she did what anyone would do. Is she knows her use of force policy. She got out of her vehicle bravely, like any police officer, and shot wildly into the air, possibly nicking an insect or two before fleeing the scene. Thank you for reaching out to me, and I'm thinking and praying for you too, because I know the bees aren't just in the skies; they're in your mind too. Drew, back to you.
Well, as Steve, Daniel, and Abby, our fellow podcasters, will tell you, there things get thematic in the podcast world. The common thread between last week's show and this week's show, obviously, are the bees. One, we always talk about bees. For some reason, that's because it's John's weakness. We also, I just realized, have set a new record on Failure to Stop Comm Center with Drew Breezy. We have mentioned the Iron Lung 2 shows in a row. So congratulations to John for doing that. Speaking of information from last week, I want to go over a story. This is a follow-up. This is a Comm Center follow-up. Comm Center follow-up. Last week, we talked about a story of an officer who was caught sending her own text messages, sending menacing text messages to herself in the claims that she was being harassed. It was kind of a setup for a lawsuit. Now, the headline reads from the Austining police, lawsuit claims officer accused of sending menacing text messages to herself had a sexual relationship with the chief. So it's Emily Hershowitz. She's with the Austining Police Department. She complained for months about receiving alarming text messages from her colleagues. However, investigations allege she'd been the one sending them all along. If you remember, we traced the call that's coming from your house. She was subsequently arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree filing a false instrument, which is a felony, and 4 counts of third-degree falsely reporting an incident. But a lawsuit by 2 former officers claims Hershowitz was involved in a sexual relationship with the village police chief, Kevin Sylvester. She was, quote, having an ongoing sexual relationship, end quote, with the top cop. The lawsuit claims, among other allegations, the New York Post claims, or reported anyway. Sylvester allegedly filed the complaint with the Westchester District Attorney's Office in August of 22 over the threatening text messages Hershowitz was reportedly receiving on her phone. And he placed the blame on one of the former officers suing the village. So if we haven't learned anything here, we should know that it takes a village, and we should bring in our village for tonight. Daniel, who is from Police Law News. Welcome, my friend. You're in the middle now. Daniel in the middle. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? I greased the skids. I want you to just take us home.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's truly an honor to be here. Again, my name is Daniel Carr. I have social media accounts that I run under Police Law News over at TikTok and Instagram. I also write on Substack over at Police Law Newsletter. I've been a police officer for just hit 18 years, and during 18 years, I'm a detective is what I'm currently now. While working the cop job, I went back for a master's degree in criminal justice and finished law school a couple years ago. When I retire here pretty soon, I plan to work as an attorney representing police officers, and I truly find all of this material extremely fascinating and love to be here to talk about some of these cases.
Man, I'd love to have you here. If you, I love your account. First of all, I mean that's kind of how we met. We met over social media. Social media is pretty powerful. Also through Substack. I love reading your articles. This guy is a busy guy. I mean, he does. If I'm not mistaken, you're a detective that handles use of force investigations or officer involved shootings, maybe, or something close to that. Or you did at one point? No.
Yes, the last 3 or 4 years, I've been a detective in a unit where not only I investigate use of force by police officers, but I've also worked in compliance, kind of overseeing not just what police officers do in the field, but also kind of overseeing and doing kind of a big level review of how internal affairs also handles those investigations.
Awesome. It sounds like you have a great setup for a great career once you leave the department, but you're having a great career now. So the thing that you'll see in common between Daniel and I is that, sometimes we disagree on things because he sees things from a different perspective. I mean, he does this for a living. He views use of force cases for a living. What we cannot stand and that we have in common is just complete dishonesty by media, complete dishonesty by social media critics. And I for one am tired of it. So I'm doing my best to call it out. All right, let's start with a little lesson, a little refresher for you. If you're not a cop, if you're a dispatcher, if you're a common citizen, or if you are a cop and you just need this refresher, let me tell you what a Terry stop is. A Terry stop is a brief detention that allows a police officer to approach a person to investigate possible criminal behavior. Okay, this is relevant in this case. I'm going to play a news clip for you first. Then Daniel and I will have some discussion over it.
Shows deputies slam a woman to the ground, and tonight, now at 11, LA County Sheriff calling the video you are watching right now disturbing. It shows deputies slam.
Of course, we're adding commentary to this News 4 report.
In the community. Good evening, everyone. I'm Colleen Williams. Sheriff Robert Luna saying at a press conference today that there is a lot we know and a lot more we don't know. And that's why the investigation is for. NBC4's Darsha Phillips live right now in Lancaster with reaction to all of this. Darsha.
Yeah, Colleen, the incident happened back on June 24th in the parking lot of this Winco in Lancaster. It was first captured on a witness's cell phone, and then on Monday, the Sheriff's Department released body cam footage. And we do want to warn you, the footage is disturbing, and it has angered many people in this community.
When do we want it?
Protesters took over the parking lot at the Winco in Lancaster, outraged over cell phone and body cam footage of a confrontation between LA County Sheriff's deputies and two black people on June 24th.
I'm not on the arrest for what?
The footage shows deputies detaining a man. Then a deputy grabs a woman who appears to be recording the incident and slams her to the ground.
No, you can't touch me. You can't touch me.
The deputy orders her to get on the ground several times and then says,
Stop. And you get punched in the face. You punch me and you're gonna get sued too.
As the deputy is trying to restrain her, she tells him she can't breathe.
Get your neck off my, I can't breathe.
At one point, he appears to put his knee near her neck and then appears to pepper spray the woman. At a press conference today, Sheriff Robert Luna didn't mince words.
It's disturbing. There's no ifs and buts about it.
But the sheriff admits the investigation into the incident is ongoing, and he doesn't have all the facts of what took place that day. The sheriff said the deputies were responding to an assault of a loss prevention officer at the Winco, and the man and woman seen in the body cam footage matched the description of the suspects. Sheriff Luna said the man in the video was cited with resisting arrest and petty theft, and the woman cited with assaulting an officer and battery of an officer inside the Winco. People at today's protest say the man and woman are innocent until proven guilty, and the deputies should have never handled them in that way.
If it was my grandma that I saw on camera get thrown on the ground.
As for those who witnessed the incident, they're disappointed in the sheriff's department and say communities of color are tired of living in fear of law enforcement.
He said they've been charged with different things. How can you charge someone and you're handcuffing them and their rights weren't even read to them?
Now, the deputies involved in the incident have been taken off field duty as the investigation into the incident continues. Reporting live from Lancaster tonight, I'm Darsha Phillips, NBC4 News.
Okay, look, there's a couple of things right off the bat that I want to address. first of all, it's this reading of the rights thing. That's a fallacy. I'm angry already. This story has been framed as black people thrown to the ground, black people scared, black people. Well, who do you think is making them scared? Do you think it's actually the police, or do you think it's actually maybe the news media telling them you need to be afraid of the police because this is what they do? What's your take on this case?
Absolutely. So my first take on a case like this, and we all know that the anti-police activists, that they're always looking for the next new case that they can just glob onto, that even if it isn't a great case, and again, as we know, use of force never looks good. It never looks pretty. But these anti-police activists, they're always looking for the next thing that they can latch onto to say, this is how all 800,000 police officers behave. And this case just has almost every element that they would be looking for if they were going to pick the perfect case. It has young white cops, older black suspects, likely a misdemeanor crime, a questionable use of force, and a magic catchphrase that you just can't unhear once it's on camera.
You're absolutely right. Look, we'll trade out, sir, stop resisting, for, hey, I can't breathe, because we know you can breathe. We know that's a lie. We know you're doing that for the camera. As a matter of fact, they made reference to him putting his knee near her neck, which isn't the case. The crux of this thing is that there is cell phone video that kicked this off. Okay, so this wasn't an issue. Supervisors reviewed it, and they determined everything was fine. Body camera wasn't released for this. It was just another day at the Winco, apparently. But there was cell phone video that emerged in this case that really makes it look bad. And I can tell you this: any use of force looks bad. It doesn't mean that it is bad. Just about 100% of the uses of force look bad. Cops don't want to use force. It's extra. There's like extra stuff to do. I think people think that we're just taking our like aggressions out on them, or it's just not the case. If you just comply, it's probably things are probably going to be a little bit more smoother. Do you agree or disagree?
Absolutely. And I'm sure we're going to get into it here in a second, but exactly what you just said, Drew. So there's a difference, and we're going to see it as we go through this case, but there's really a difference between how the police officers interacted and what happened with the male and what happened with the female. And there's really only one difference between the male and the female: active resistance. And we see how police officers act when someone doesn't actively resist and when someone does actively resist. And that's really the nexus. That's really what happened here and why this case went to this, I would agree with questionable use of force.
Okay, we're going to watch actual body cam footage in a minute. I just kind of wanted to cover some of the news coverage because it's just very interesting what they how they frame this. Like I'm just they're like growing controversy, and then they tell you they say things, they prime you by saying, we just want you to know that what you're about to see is very disturbing. I mean, if they come on, I mean, if this were a baby duck about to eat a goldfish in a pond, and they told you what you're about to see is very disturbing, you would probably be disturbed. I mean, you're being primed to do so. And I think that's just another media trick. Like if it's that disturbing that you don't think the public deserves to see it, then don't show it. But this happens on a very regular basis. This is very minor resistance. This is very minor use of force. It looks bad. The optics are horrible because it's an elderly female. I mean, they call her elderly. She doesn't look elderly. She doesn't look like she's having trouble getting around. And what this all started from also, by the way, if we can back up just a second, Daniel, you and I talked about this a little bit before the cameras turned on. The phone call itself that came from the Winco, I did a public records request for the LA Sheriff's Department for that specific phone call. I've been assigned a control number to kind of check the status on it. I checked the status on it this afternoon. It's not ready. I don't know that they're ready to release it yet. I tend to think that maybe they're just working on it. I don't, they're very big into transparency right now with the new sheriff, Sheriff Luna. So I don't think they're holding anything back as far as that's concerned. I'm very curious to know what happened in that 911 call, because it was a 911 call. It's been widely reported it was a 911 call from inside the Winco. Was it an employee saying, "Help, I'm being robbed"? Was it an employee saying, "Hey, there are two people in here stealing stuff and they're fighting with me"? And the dispatcher kind of interpreted that as a robbery. Did the dispatcher interpret it as, well, this is a theft with some kind of violence going on? And I mean, John, what's your take on this? I know we have discussed this before. What happens in a call like this?
Well, first, I wanted to just circle back and say that I've got a unique perspective on this too. I appreciate that we've got two seasoned detectives here. I've been working alongside detectives a long time. Some of you may know that I was in loss prevention before I was ever a correctional officer. So I have a very unique perspective when it comes to shoplifters. I hate them. No, when someone dials 911, very often someone will use a very inflammatory language. Someone will say, "I've just been robbed," or "There's a home invasion in progress." These things are not the same thing. First of all, a home invasion is a term invented by ADT, or an alarm company, to make a burglary in progress sound worse. But when someone calls in and they say, "There's a robbery happening right now," or "I've just been robbed," what does that mean? Well, to the letter of the law, it means they use force or coercion to deprive someone of property. Think getting mugged, or a typical bank robbery like what you would see in a movie. They're using either a threat of violence, implied violence, the presence of a weapon, that's armed robbery, to deprive someone of the property. Now, burglary, of course, is when someone enters a structure either by breaking or simply unlatching a door and going inside and taking something. Theft, of course, is where shoplifting comes in. It's usually petty theft. If you're looking at something in a grocery store, even if they loaded up a whole cart and pushed it out, the added up value of all the items in that cart are not usually going to equal an amount. Definitely not in California that's going to equal grand theft.
No.
For grand theft, you're going to be talking, in most jurisdictions, the minimum threshold is at least $1,000. In many places, it's higher, particularly with Biden inflation going on. The cost of grand theft is also going up. People can try to go to grand theft, and they
with
get
Biden inflation, actually,
they get there sooner.
It stands to reason that you would need less product to get higher.
Yeah, they thought they were merely committing a petty theft, and all of a sudden, boom! No, eggs are $4 a piece, buddy. So
right.
you're going
so
to
that's
the
48.
You're going to the penitentiary now because you took milk and eggs on this one. But the response from a dispatcher is totally different. I gave this example before where a loss prevention person from a hardware store called in and said, "We have just been robbed. The suspect is fleeing the scene. He's westbound on this major road, and now he's northbound on the interstate." Well, if we have a robbery that just occurred, we're full felony stop situation. That means police are going to pursue. It means they may use tactics such as a pit maneuver, spikes, and other things to stop that vehicle in jurisdictions where pursuits are allowed. And it means they're also going to engage in a felony stop. This is what you see in all the cool action movies. Get out of the car, come out with your hands up, get down on your knees, and they do the whole thing. Of course, I think any reasonable person, any layman could tell that someone stealing a carton of eggs or whatever, secreting that under their blouse or just pushing it out in a cart is that's not an appropriate response to draw your weapon on them and be treating them as though they are a felon in flight. I'm sure that you guys will pile on the legal knowledge about what it means to be a felon in flight. It changes the whole use of force continuum, but the public just does not commonly understand the difference between theft, burglary, and robbery. And when a dispatcher gets the report of a robbery, sometimes we have to ask many clarifying questions to fully understand what's going on. Drew.
So Daniel, just from the response standpoint, you and I were both street cops at one point. I mean, you're thinking, you're reading the screen. Let's go with the lowest scenario, which would be there's a petty theft in progress. They're fighting with the shop owners, and I can hear a bunch of commotion in the background. Well, you don't know what you got. You don't know if you got a fight. You don't know if you've got, you know what I mean? It's going to affect
response. If you think that you have someone who committed a misdemeanor inside the store, obviously that's still going to be a response from the police. Probably you're going to still want to place those people into custody, but it wouldn't be the same, probably even not even the same amount of officers who are dispatched if there was a robbery, where if something was taken by force, because that adds it to a felony level crime, that is going to be a very serious thing. And just like John said a second ago, if the offender flees, that's one of those things that a police officers, they are going to chase for. They probably are going to use a pit maneuver or spike strips, where if it's someone shoplifting a carton of eggs, even if they're really expensive eggs, and if they get away, we're not going to be setting up the helicopter in order to get them into custody.
By the way, I'm pretty sure, unless it's gone up, I think the threshold between misdemeanor and felony in California is $1,000. It was $300 for years and years here in Florida. Just right before I retired, it bumped up to $750. So it's hard to get up to $750. I mean, even like, let's just say hypothetically, like I'm sure your town is the same as mine. We all had the Walmart problem where we spend most of our time at the Walmart because that's where the majority of the crimes happen. But you know, somebody throws a flat screen TV into a shopping cart and runs out the front door. That used to be over $300, obviously, but the scales moved. So now, you know, you got to meet the $750 threshold, and the price of big screen TVs have come down conveniently to below $750. So, you know, it's kind of like free big screen TVs, but you know, in a sense, just from an administrative standpoint, do we want to risk our officers? Do you want to risk personal injury for the theft of property from a business that's under, say, $1,000? I mean,
exactly. And I could see some people saying, well, I mean, if it's the same crime, if it's the same act from the offender, what does it matter if it's a misdemeanor or a felony? Like, shouldn't you just want to get the bad guy into custody? And that's why I really think it's important to just remember that use of force from a police officer has to be reasonable. And you go, well, what makes the use of force reasonable? Like, what metrics are we going by? And one of those most important things when it comes to whether or not a use of force is reasonable is the seriousness of the crime. So that's why it is so important exactly what kind of crime it was. And just like you guys were saying, people don't always know the difference between robbery, home invasion, theft. And it's because of that seriousness of the crime is one of the elements, one of the metrics that is going to be seriously evaluated about whether or not the use of force is reasonable, therefore within department policy and maybe even within the law.
Right. Yeah, it's totally it's totality of circumstances. I mean, like the problem is when we're trying to get there and we're trying to evaluate what's happening on the little tiny 5-inch computer screen in your car, and you're trying to navigate traffic. And of course, even if, you know, this probably wouldn't be a lights and sirens situation unless it was actually reported as a robbery. I mean, then it might be, but an armed robbery, I would think. But, you know, nobody's going to get out of your way. They don't get out of your way when you have lights and sirens on. So I'm going to tell you, they probably aren't going to get out of your way. And that's what generates most of the complaints from the citizens, by the way. They like, that officer was speeding and they didn't have their lights on. And yeah, I mean, we do that. We speed to get to a domestic without the lights and sirens, or we speed to get to places, and we speed, you know, like we should sometimes too. I mean, I don't want to, you know, act like we don't. And, you know, Daniel, you're the same as I am. I've seen it in you. You're going to call out when a cop does something bad. I mean, we I think slightly differ on our opinion of this case in and of itself. Let's go ahead and watch the body cam. Do you have anything to add before I go to the body cam?
I just want to say that I think it's extremely important to not only praise good police work, but also call out bad police work. Because if we truly believe in the institution of policing, being pro-police, I mean, to me, that's what that means, is that we want people to believe in policing. We want people to trust in policing. And just to be as honest as I can be, backing up police no matter what every single time, like it's a reflex, to me that's just boring. I think we need to have honest discussions, and if we want the other side to be honest, which they're not going to be, and I get it, but if we expect honesty, or at least asking for honesty from the other side, the anti-police maniacs, then we have to be honest too when we see something that doesn't go exactly like we would want it to.
It is a world of extremes. I know that a lot of you probably haven't picked up on that in the last 4 years or 8 years or whatever it is, but it just seems like you have one opinion or another. You're not allowed to be in the middle, and I relish. I love being in the middle. I love looking at things objectively, and that's what I respect and admire the most about your Substack or your opinions on the Instagram account. I don't have TikTok, but you're in the middle. Like you're just looking at things objectively and like, ooh, this looks bad. I mean, you know, the story that breaks my heart the most that we talked about before we started this thing, the golden retriever that was shot the other day, or the golden lab, whatever it was. We definitely agree on that one. Like, this cop just is afraid of dogs, so he took a golden, like, come on, dude. Like, I mean, listen, I'll tell you, this is how excited I am over. I'll take a dog bite. I'll be okay. Dogs are just trying to do their, I heard something very poignant from a guy who was almost shot and almost killed in the line of duty. He's like, I don't feel bad shooting back at the bad guy and killing him and taking his life. That's a conscious choice he made. I feel bad when I'm serving a SWAT search warrant and the German Shepherd comes running at me and I have to shoot the dog. The dog is just doing its job. In this case, the dog is just doing its job to greet people happily with tail a wagging. I think it even circled back to the house and came back and is just being dopey and, hey, how you doing? And this officer shot him. This is a typical, like, I can't tell you how many times I've said in a roll call, Daniel, just because you can use deadly force or just because you can pull that gun out and use it doesn't mean you should. And I know you have an opinion on this dog thing.
Yeah, so my opinion on this dog case, and it's pretty much been everywhere. And I've been bit by a dog on duty. I've got 2 big Great Pyrenees dogs, and I've worked with a lot of police officers who are afraid of dogs. Listen, that's okay. That isn't a crime. That's completely fine. But if you're afraid of dogs, call animal control if you have those resources available. Stay in your car, block traffic. If you're afraid of dogs and you literally aren't going to be any help, don't get out of your car. And it just seems like this entire thing was completely avoidable. And yeah, Dixie the dog should still be alive. And people in that community are pissed off. And not only do we want the dog to live, of course, but what this is going to do between community relations between that entire police department, officers who had nothing to do with that case, it's just going to destroy the community relationship between the police department and the officers. And that's almost as much of a tragedy as the dog passing away.
This is it. It's just one step up and 2 steps back. Sometimes we are our own worst enemy. Let's take a look at this video and see if we're our own worst enemy in this one.
Put your hands on the hood. Put your hands on the hood. Put your hands on the hood.
All right. For those listening and not watching, you can hear very active verbal resistance. It's everyone screams de-escalation, but if the person you're trying to de-escalate isn't participating, isn't playing in your reindeer games, that's kind of hard to pull off. And you hear him yelling. He's like, I ain't put my hands behind my back. I ain't doing that. I ain't doing that. I ain't doing that.
Listen, have a seat then. Have a seat. Have a seat. Have a seat then. Have a seat. Have a seat. Have a seat.
They approached us first, man.
Okay, so the guy who we don't see on camera yet is saying they approached us first. We didn't do nothing wrong. This kind of goes back. If you didn't do anything wrong, I get that you're completely inconvenienced, but you could also say, I didn't do anything wrong. What do you got? Let's just let me give you the 5 minutes of time that it's going to take to clear the air, instead of being completely combative. You can't have it both ways. You can't be, because I'm going to tell you right now, this guy does not appear to be afraid of the police. Daniel?
I agree. He's not afraid of the police. And I think it's important to remember that whether this was dispatched as a theft with an assault or whether it was dispatched as a robbery in progress, that when the police officers arrive on scene, they still have to take into account what the facts are on the ground. And this is an individual who is essentially, he's an older gentleman. I'm not going to say elderly, but he's an older gentleman, and he's standing there with a cake. We all know how robbers, people who commit felonies inside stores, what they do as soon as they exit the store, they don't stand around waiting for police holding a cake. And that's what this guy was doing. So I do believe that the police officer had reasonable suspicion at this point, and the commands that he was giving also would be considered de-escalation as well. Because Drew, I mean, look at this. This is a case where I think we all agree that there was reasonable suspicion to detain him. The officer didn't jump out of the car and immediately try to throw him into handcuffs. The officer utilized his time. He uses distance. And yes, what he's saying to the individual, maybe we could say it's commands, but that's still de-escalation. He's trying to de-escalate the situation instead of immediately going hands-on.
Yeah, it should be noted if you're listening to this and not watching. The officer is still in the doorway of his car. So whatever commands he's giving is it's just from a distance. And you're right. This is a form of de-escalation. So, I mean, he's trying. And I think the other thing that the people that are listening will have picked out that maybe those watching haven't, while he's giving those commands, you can hear other literal sirens, police sirens. So you can hear the response. Like, obviously something is big. Something big was dispatched, right? Unless they're not going to that location. Maybe they're going somewhere else, but let's see.
Hey, Kirk, I'm making contact now. He's on call.
He's
Get down. Sit down, dude. We'll figure this out.
We ain't getting wrong.
Well, if you sit down, we'll figure that out.
We just walked out.
Can you just have a seat on that rock?
I told him to call the police, bro.
All right, just chill out.
So look, can I stand up?
Hold on, dude.
I waited for you. I could have took over and get on.
Hey, Kirk, this is a male and the female's gonna be in the
I stand
car.
up with my cake, sir.
Just have a seat, dude.
He's now approaching him. He's walking up to him. The guy's holding
What's
a
going
cake.
on, dude?
He's kind of sitting on a
He
rock.
come, I mean, ordering some shit, right?
Just relax.
I'm just gonna pat you down, buddy.
I don't have nothing.
Okay, there was wet.
Okay, so the other officer has arrived, and he's saying, I don't have anything. He said, we're just going to pat you down real quick. This is the Terry stop that we were talking about earlier. I was anyway. You see anything out of the ordinary, Daniel?
I don't see anything out of the ordinary, but what I would say is, again, you have a situation where no matter how it was dispatched, you have an individual where this guy even says it. I waited for you. I waited for the police. I could have left. He's standing there with a cake. And even if you have reasonable suspicion to detain at this time, since this individual is clearly has something to say, if it were me in that situation, and what I would like other officers to think about is, just because you have reasonable suspicion doesn't mean you have to throw him in handcuffs. I mean, this is a guy who wants to tell you a story. Listen to his story.
Yeah, that's great. Communication goes a long way, and communication is a two-way street. I think, though, in my experience, I've noticed that West Coast, like coastal West Coast, LA, the use of handcuffs is pretty prevalent in just an investigative detention. Whereas we didn't really do that as much in Florida. I don't know if it's like that in southwestern United States or even Northwest, but it seems to me like even when I was growing up watching cops or whatever, it seems like, hey, they would have them interlace their fingers behind their head, and then they would just put the handcuffs on them, and then they would investigate whatever they got. Not even necessarily throw them in the back of the patrol car, but they would keep them in handcuffs. I don't know if this came from gang culture or where it developed. The Supreme Court backs it, and there are a couple of, in fact, the LA Sheriff's Department policy is fine with it. I can read that to you if I find it, but basically their handcuffing policy just, there's a couple of things that you have to articulate, but most importantly, you have to be able to articulate why you handcuff this guy. Just like you say, I mean, he's got reasonable suspicion. I think, I bet you the part with he was sitting on a rock holding a cake and he stuck around and he was yelling, I stuck around and waited for you, is not going to make it into the report. But and that may not be the dishonest part, but because he ended up getting charged anyway. I mean, we have the benefit of hindsight on this one. So let's continue.
You don't know that.
Man, I don't have nothing, brother, but a pack of cigarettes. See, there go this. Now what? I'm not even being resistant.
That's life over there.
Okay, so very, you may have missed it. He said that's his wife over there. The call came in as a male and a female. They matched the description of the suspects. He's obviously engaged in dialogue, identifying himself as the suspect. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Huh?
All right, dude.
Wait, I'm not under arrest for what?
You're not under arrest. You're
You'll be detained.
Very specifically, you're not. He's like, I'm under arrest for what? He said, you're not under arrest. You're being detained.
Detained for what? For what?
Dude, calm down.
What have I done? I haven't stolen up. Man, I can bust loose. Why y'all doing this shit, man?
That was a pretty important phrase. What did he say there?
He said, I could bust loose. as the officers are putting the handcuffs on. Now, I think it's important to point out that he does verbally say that. So essentially, that's a threat to not only overpower police officers, but also to escape from police officers. But what he says verbally doesn't match what he does physically, because he is compliant and he does allow officers to handcuff him.
I'll play devil's advocate. This guy is saying, hey, look, I stuck around. I'm standing here. I'm not doing anything. I don't have any weapons on me, although they don't know that. And here you are sticking handcuffs on me. I could see where you'd be a little agitated over that. But at the same time, I've been on the other side of that. Like we don't know. We just don't know what we have, totally. And everything that they're doing, the court has allowed. So, I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts before I go forward?
No, I actually think that we see this pretty similar, that the police officers have the legal right to do everything that they're doing, but was it the best tactic? I mean, is this what they should have done? And again, I'm just going to say it. You have the biggest thing to me is that he could have left and he didn't. He tells the police officers that he's an older guy standing there with a cake. He wants to tell police officers a story. I say, unless it looks like he's a threat or is going to threaten you, listen to a story. And that would be my tactic. But I don't know if it's just a thing in the Southwest. It may just be more of my style.
We have a comment from Christy, which is a pretty, it's a pretty insightful comment. It says they do escalate things, though, in some cases, though, because she used to hear things like, for your safety and mine, I'm putting cuffs on you. But I guess my counter to that, and not every situation is exact, but doesn't that validate it? I mean, if things get escalated because you put handcuffs on them, doesn't that kind of validate why you were putting handcuffs on them? Like you'll never know. So you don't know if his breaking point was right before they busted the handcuffs out of the handcuff pouch, or it's because you put the handcuffs on them. Either way, you're allowed to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's allowed. So there's no violation at this point.
Bro, why y'all doing all this?
Dude, relax. Or you're going to get put down. Dude, just...
Man, my wife is paralegal. Oh, my arm's fucked up, man. My arm is fucked up.
Where's Blake? Right here.
Tell her I'm flexing on my arm. No, you can't touch me. Hey, wait, don't tell me you do that to my wife. Come on,
Have
man.
a seat.
Why you doing this to me, man?
Calm down.
We ain't did nothing. Dude,
See, deputy's gonna want to fight.
I'm not gonna fight you, man. You put in my wife, she got cancer. She got cancer, man.
All right, dude.
Man, come on, bro. I'm not gonna fight with no deputy. You cool. Hey, you a deputy, you cool, bro. I'm not gonna
Calm
fight
down,
with you.
dude.
I calm down. Let me shut up. Can I shut up?
No.
No, I'm on sticky ass bushes, man. I hit my sister. Oh, man, come on, man. Y'all don't have to do this shit, bro. That's wrong, man. You gotta do that too. She got cancer, big bro. Man, don't do her like that, man. Let me
Dude, calm
shut up.
down, man.
No, I ain't doing nothing. Let me shut up. I swear to God, I'm not gonna get up. You got my word, boss. You got my word. I'm not gonna get up. Man, she got cancer, man.
Well, why are you guys acting like this?
She's acting like that because they waited, rolled up on it. Hey, the guard came up on his boat like, rrr. That's all he did, bro. Everybody said, I want to get violent with somebody.
Have a seat.
Bro.
You got her?
Yeah, man. Man, babe, you all right? No.
Let me get 902.
She got cancer, bro. She got cancer.
All right.
Is switching and
Oh, you know, her phone.
Okay,
Give me the
okay.
phone. I'm not doing nothing, man. You just can't fight. I'm not fighting with y'all.
Hey, dude, calm down.
I am, but she just...
111, if you can, each time are you in the parking lot, so we go?
She got cancer, man. Oh, man, it's my credit card and stuff.
I can't see what.
Just whoa, JC. Let me calm down. Let me calm down, bro. Oh, man, my arm, bro, my arm.
You can't bossing me around and throwing me
JC, stop. Just quit. Stop it. Just stop. Just relax.
Have a seat.
Yeah, bro, hold on. I want to make sure she's all right,
She's
man.
all right. Sit down.
I'll sit down. JC, just cooperate, JC.
Have a seat in the car.
She ain't gonna do nothing, bro.
Have a seat in the car.
We didn't even leave, sir. We
You're
didn't
making it
leave.
worse. Get up.
I can't.
Have a seat.
Doing
So
what?
He'll put her in the back seat. She
I
can calm
want to make
down.
sure she all right,
Move your
man.
foot.
I know you're gonna have consequences.
All you had to do was listen.
I didn't do anything. You was mad because I videoed and put it on YouTube. That's why you was mad.
Take a seat. No, I'm mad because it's a C-111. We're gonna have 2 detained. Then we just have fire and a sergeant Ringo, and 1 extra unit.
I have asthma.
Okay.
111-10 for you have 1 out and 110 responding, 110 Sam just went 97 and fire is speaking. We'll advise them it's clear to enter. Confirm.
You know, the rest I think is just superfluous. But I'm thinking in my use of force investigation as the shift commander or the supervisor on the scene, I'm going to include things like you're going to have to review that body cam first of all, but you're going to have to include things like before you even interview them. You know, he's yelling she has cancer. I don't hear her yelling she has cancer. One. So I do understand that you probably need to treat somebody with kid gloves that has cancer. However, somebody who has cancer probably isn't going to be filming you on YouTube if you know what I mean? So these are kinds of things that I'm going to evaluate as a supervisor. I'm also going to look at the fact that this guy, unprovoked, is yelling at his wife to calm down and stop resisting and just comply and just cooperate. And she's like, I am. If he's recognizing it, then how is it that the officer is in the wrong for recognizing it? I guess would be my question. So this would be part of the evaluative process of a use of force investigation. I mean, you know, obviously I'm going to take pictures of everybody's injuries and get everybody's statements. The cell phone video that kicked this whole thing off would definitely be a part of it. But there are things that are being said that definitely lend to the actions that they took as more of a reaction than action. What do you think?
So there's no question that she was actively resisting, but my biggest issue with this happens right at the beginning, right when the police officer goes and approaches the female. And my issue is that he never tells her she's under arrest. He never gives her a command or an order or a direction to, hey, can you place your hands behind your back? He just goes hands on. And it's later on, after she's in custody, he said, all you had to do was listen. Well, listen to what? At no point did he tell her that she was under arrest or give her direction. Now, I totally, completely know that there are times when it is not feasible. And that's what we have to look at. Was it feasible or safe for the police officer to give an order that you're under arrest? Was it feasible? Was it possible for the officer to give her specific instructions, maybe even have a dialogue before going to force? Was that possible in this situation? And if we look at this objectively, she's, probably a 60-year-old female who was filming, who, again, whatever crime she may have committed, she didn't leave the scene. Like, was there time before going hands-on to give her some type of warning or direction? And I'm going to say yes, that there absolutely was. And that's my biggest criticism of the police response in this case, is not having any kind of a conversation of warning of force or even a direction that you're under arrest prior to the use of force.
Yeah, the first two elements, or the first two uses of force, so to speak, or it used to be on the continuum. I know we don't use continuums anymore, especially in major locations, but your presence and your verbal command. So, that was what we used to call de-escalation before it was called de-escalation. Just trying to talk to people, and like, okay, put the camera down. We need to talk, or come here, that kind of thing. I agree with you that there could have been a little bit more dialogue. We'll look at his body cam and see if it shows anything. John, do you have anything?
Yeah, I compare this case to the Troyer case that we keep talking about so much. I think that there's a certain segment of the population, and you could just call them the criminal segment if you want, but they feel very emboldened right now. There's no basic level of respect for law enforcement. When a police officer arrives on scene, as you said, the first level of use of force is their presence. Well, it's no longer forceful just because of the mentality that people have for police officers. The cops show up, and these two have an attitude like, there's not authority here. I could still be mouthy. I could still cause trouble. I don't have to follow any verbal commands. So your officer presence not being effective. Your verbal commands, they're not listening to that. I'm not trying to argue with anybody here about use of force because I'm not the expert on the subject, but I just say that the culture of lawlessness and the culture of disrespect for law enforcement inevitably results in cases like these. It used to be the case, just to age myself, but when the cops showed up, you did what they said, and that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Back to you guys.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and they're also, which also lent to, if you went hands on with somebody, it was an extreme situation, and it's kind of not that way anymore. It just seems like, but in the defense of the officers that are on the street right now, things are a lot more violent than they were when I was on the street, for sure. I mean, even towards the end of my career, when I was on the street as a shift lieutenant or a shift commander or whatever, things are violent. Officers are being shot and killed at higher rates than they were back in 95 or 98 when I was out there doing my thing on the street. So going hands on may not be the worst thing. Go ahead.
Daniel, just wonder what you thought. Christy made another comment. In her metro area, bail reform has made everyone bold. They know they are not staying in jail, so they don't care. You think that has an effect on how people treat the police when they first arrive? If they know they're not going to stay in jail, if there's not substantial bail, or at least reasonable bail for them to pose a problem to them, they know that they're basically going to get booked and kicked out of jail and be on their way in an hour. Does that affect the way people interact with police officers in that initial contact?
100%. And that is such a great comment, because that's exactly it. A lot of times people, they didn't want to be, well, no one wants to be arrested, but people would do things in interactions with police officers, so maybe they wouldn't be taken to jail. Maybe they would just be given a cite or a warning. But now it doesn't matter whether they get arrested. They're not going to be in there for a few days. They're going to be kicked out immediately. So the incentive for people to behave like normal, decent humans, a lot of that goes away in interactions with police officers with this bail reform nonsense.
I would also say that it disincentivizes police officers to be very proactive or to take action, because I'm sure that you have both been through this, but you have a case right in front of you you're dealing with. You're dealing with people like these who are extremely difficult. You're going to go through a whole bunch of work and expose yourself to a ton of liability. And not only they're going to be out of jail and back on the streets before your shift is over, you're going to see them on patrol. You're going to see them again, but you're going to go through this whole case, and the state's attorney is likely going to throw it out just because, again, the state's attorneys all around the country are not very pro-police. Does that affect you as a police officer, knowing that not only is there no effect on these people right away from not staying in jail, and potentially less so down the road?
Absolutely. If you would go ahead and poll police officers and you would say, hey, you're going to be dispatched to a call like this, it's some kind of a theft at a grocery store, and you say, hey, would you police officers, would you rather have the offenders be there ready for you to make contact, or would you rather have them already left and you're just sitting there taking a report? There is no question the majority of police officers right now, the incentive isn't to do a good job and take people to jail and try to get some justice for true victims, but it's just to try to stay out of trouble. And that is a sad state that we're in right now.
It's okay. So you want me to go there? This is why I say this is a broader issue for public safety, period, because police officers are not only police officers are not only apprehensive about doing their job, it's getting them hurt. It's getting everybody else hurt. It's getting all the citizens hurt. And it's driving people out of the profession, because who's going to want to work in a profession where you go, this is not like a heat of the moment, I threw an extra punch. You got somebody videoing you that is part, that that you're going to detain and more than likely going to arrest. You go, you put her on the ground, throw her on the ground as has been shown. Let's call it what it is, and pepper spray her because she's not compliant. And she's probably not compliant because you just threw her on the ground. So, I mean, it's a vicious cycle. But they also are empowered and emboldened, and they understand you're not going to do anything to me. All I have to do is hold this camera up to your face, and it's going to intimidate you, and you're going to get in trouble for this. You're going to get sued. You're going to get indicted. And I'm going to walk away scot-free with this delicious, apple butter cake. It's frustrating. It's sad. It's maddening, because you're losing good leaders out on the street. You're losing good police officers that, obviously maybe he was a little aggressive in this, but obviously he knew how to do his job, and he knew when to detain. He knew not to let it escalate, beyond this level of force. He backed right off once he got control, though, people are going to argue about the the use of the pepper spray, but she was still resisting. I mean, it's active resistance. I think that's a greater conversation about public safety that people neglect because we're too afraid to offend somebody, or we're too afraid to give them a bond, or because of the color of their skin, they should be able to, they get a free pass. And that's bullshit, to be honest. That's my take on it. Like, it's equal and it's universal. If you don't want to talk about two-tier justice systems, let's not have a two-tier justice system. That's
absolutely. And it might sound like I'm criticizing the officer, which again, I think is important to do, to look at these cases honestly and objectively. But all of that has to be under the umbrella that we just realize and recognize that even good, decent, moral police officers who have good intentions can make mistakes in situations that are dynamic and violent with uncooperative suspects.
And in cases like these used to be a use of force, like a training issue and maybe a suspension letter or reprimand or something, but now they're a full-blown, we have to report this to the Department of Justice and we're going to turn this over to the district attorney's office and he's probably going to face charges. Well, what do you mean? Like, this is just a simple use of force. This is exactly, we've done 200 million of these over the centuries in the United States. Why is this one different? Just because it was captured on video. And yes, the optics are horrible, but we can't keep chasing optics. At some point, we're going to have to stand up and say, yes, this looks bad. You know what also is bad? When somebody has got a camera in your face. I mean, what was the state? I think it was, I don't think it was Michigan. One of the states has just come out with legislation that says you can't be within.
Was it Kentucky or Indiana? I remember
Arizona.
Maybe
Arizona has a 15-foot rule.
Okay, so 15 feet you can't be in. So let's look at the other body cam. Abby is completely right. We need to address the I can't breathe situation here, but that'll come better on this body cam, I think. Oop.
Come here.
So this is the second officer. He's approaching from
We're just gonna pat you down, big dog.
I don't have nothing.
Okay, relax. We don't know that.
Man, I don't have nothing.
Okay, we're just gonna
pack a cigarette. See, there go this. Now what? I'm not even being resistant.
Also, in the totality of circumstances and the use of force investigation that I'm doing, I'm going to talk about the officer's demeanor. They were trying to gain compliance. They were not amped up. They weren't screaming. They weren't yelling. They weren't throwing people around. They weren't pointing weapons. They were doing their job.
Huh? Wait. No, man. I'm not. Wait. No, I'm not under arrest for what?
You're not under arrest. You're being
Well, why are you detained for what? For what?
Listen.
What have I done? I haven't stolen up. Man, I can bust loose. Why y'all doing this shit, man? Boss, why y'all doing all this?
Dude, relax. Or you're gonna
that
get
man
put down.
was threatening me, man.
Dude, just.
I didn't hear that before, Daniel. Did you catch what he just said?
All I heard him say is that that man was threatening me.
He said, dude, relax or you're going to get put down.
Oh, okay.
So this is his go-to. I mean, perhaps he's Jimmy Superfly Snuka or something and he has a go-to move, but he just literally said, hey, relax or you're going to get put down, meaning this is his method of control. Maybe he is trained in ground fighting and he feels more comfortable having the subject on the ground.
My wife's a paralegal. Oh, my arm is fucked up, man. My arm is fucked up, man. I'm telling you, it's hell operation over here. Now you can't.
So there she is with her phone up, just in an intimidating fashion. I don't. There is no other good reason to do that. It's to intimidate. It's basically to say, hey, I am here and I am watching you, so you will not you will conduct yourself professionally, even if I am part of the crime, and I don't have an issue with him walking towards her, knowing that the camera is on because he's got a body camera too. He's fine with what he's doing. You know what I mean? He doesn't fear the policy violation. Do you see something different other than the verbalization, Daniel?
No, I don't see anything different. And yeah, as much as I said, we're kind of nitpicking the things that the officer maybe should have done differently. I mean, look at what she's doing. She is actively resisting that police officer. It's kind of like that line from Fight Club. You know, you're part of this. You're part of this crime. You see your husband being placed in handcuffs. You're approaching the officers, pretty much getting right on top of them with a phone. And what did you think was going to happen?
The freeze frame that the media keeps using is when he does have, you'll see in a second, he puts his hand around her neck to do the takedown, the back of her neck, and he throws her down to the ground. They don't use this freeze frame right here, which I think is pretty poignant. This is exactly how I was trained in defensive tactics. When you're about to do a takedown, this is like you're trying to gain compliance or an escort hold. This may be called. Because you can slip that right hand down and grab a hold of the wrist and do a wrist compression while you're putting pressure with your left hand here. But more importantly, I see in this, I just happen to randomly pause it here, is that she's pulling away from him. She is actively pulling away. So whether you're bracing or tensing, this could be a passive resistance or an active resistance where you're pulling away. Maybe you're not necessarily fighting the cops, but you're definitely not, you know what I mean? You're doing a swift action to escape or to get away. This does warrant some type of reaction. You got to figure out, why is she trying to create distance? I mean, does she have a gun? Does she, and those are the criticisms that we're always going to have to stand up to.
You can't touch me. You can't touch me.
You can't touch me.
Get down on the ground. Get on the ground.
It's already on YouTube.
Stop.
Live.
I don't give. Stop.
Motherfucker, stop.
Stop. You're gonna get punched in the face.
You punch me and you're gonna get sued too.
Okay. Yes, she's a poor grandmother, elderly woman, blah, blah, blah. Motherfucker, if you punch me. Is she worried about the pain when she gets punched? What is she worried about?
I have never met a grandmother so sweet. And I just want to say that's what they've been playing on the media. The police officer saying basically a warning of force that she's going to get punched. I am 100% good with that. And Drew, I'm curious what you would have to say about that. Is the warning of force, of letting someone know, if you don't comply, these are the consequences. This is how police officers are trained. This is what we want police officers to do. He's not punching her in the face. It was a warning of force. I think that was a very good thing for the police officer to do, to try to gain compliance.
I've never been a big puncher in the facer, but he is at least telling her, like, dude, I'm about to crack you in the skull here. And her immediate concern is not, be careful, I have a new set of dentures, or, I just paid for these teeth or whatever. Her concern is, if you punch me, I'm going to sue you. She's not afraid of the pain. She wants the punch. But she is warning him, just like he's warning her. I'm about to distract you with a punch to the chops. She's saying, go ahead and do it, because I'm calling an attorney and I'm getting your money.
Which is the same exact reason that she was filming right in the officer's face. That's why she said that line. Sometimes the quiet part is out loud, and there it is.
Yep.
You already got sued. I got it on camera.
Stop. Turn around.
Camera. Get your neck off my. I can't breathe.
Hey, we're in a fight.
Okay, so she's saying, get your neck off of my, she went to say, get your neck off of my knee. She really wanted to say, get your knee off of my neck. This is for the cameras. This is for her camera that is probably rolling. This is for his body camera. And this is for the cell phone camera that caught the whole thing of the lady that was sitting in the parking lot. His knee is not on her neck. And you'll see any other, you can see even some of the news stations break it down. They're like, it appears that his knee is on her neck. And it's not. It's on her shoulder. It's nowhere. It's not even near her neck. And this is why use of force is ugly. But this guy is trained in defensive tactics. It appears that he's trained in some type of ground fighting anyway. And he keeps saying, or she starts saying, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Well, how are you screaming like you are? And how are you so calmly telling me that you're about to sue me? And how are you telling me to get my knee off? To get my knee
can see the still frame from the officer's body camera footage that his hands, his feet, his knees, his toes, nothing is near her neck. It's like that meme where it says mostly peaceful, where the reporter says it and everything is on fire behind. This is exactly what that is, because she is screaming, "I can't breathe," for the cameras, for the audio, when the officer is doing nothing at this moment that would cause her to not breathe except her screaming.
Yeah, but for the washed out lighting of the parking lot, if you're watching this, you can see she's holding a mask, like a COVID mask, but you can see her face. Like, you can clearly see her face, unless he's got, like Plastic Man like length to his legs. I don't think that his knee would reach, but there is a point where you can very clearly see on other video. I've seen it on news clips where his knee is on her back, like on her, I guess it would be her, she's kind of leaning on the ground on her left side, so up on her right shoulder. And yeah, he's trying to get her into a 3-point cuffing stance. It's 3-point cuffing stance. It's
catches it. I mean, what the officer is doing is essentially, again, she's actively resisting. The officer is trying to get her onto her stomach, and she is pushing against the officer, trying to roll back onto her back. And the police officer does use his leg, his knee, kind of to stop it in order to brace it so she can't completely turn over. And that's what the camera catches.
Right. Exactly.
I can't breathe. There's no fight. You threw me down to the ground. Stop manhandling me. I didn't do nothing. You threw me down. Call the commander.
Okay, for the benefit of those listening, he just pepper sprayed her twice. She's still actively resisting. Perhaps not the most brutal active resistance I've ever seen, but she's also saying, "Stop manhandling me." Okay, well, I've got a way to do that. I won't manhandle you anymore. I'll just, from a distance, spray you with this pepper spray and get you into compliance and put handcuffs on you. I mean, I think it's a little, I won't even say that. I mean, I was going to say, I think it's a little extreme, but it's a tool on your belt. It's essentially a de-escalation when you think about it, when you compared to what he could do. He'd never punched her in the face. He didn't take out his ass baton and start striking her. He didn't shoot her. He didn't kick her. He is not amped up still. He is still very calm, and he's still trying to gain compliance. This is not a, okay, well, you want to be part of a wrestling match, here we go. What say you?
I don't love the pepper spray. And I've arrested approximately 3,000 people. I've used it one time and it didn't work. And anytime one of my buddies used pepper spray, it affected me more than the person that I was arresting. So I'm a little biased there. However, that being said, in looking at exactly what's going on, the use of the pepper spray with dealing with someone who is actively resisting, yes, it would be in the range of what is reasonable use of force given the circumstances, but it's not my favorite force option, I'll tell you.
I can understand that. I was pretty successful with the pepper spray. I was also, when I was in FTO, we literally had just got pepper spray, and we were fighting a naked man in the rain, and my FTO looked me dead in the eye and yelled that he was going to spray, and then sprayed me dead in the eye. I like pepper spray for Dixie the dog, not for this sweet grandma. Fair enough.
Hands behind your back.
Commander, stop twisting my arm.
Put your hands behind your back.
I'm not doing anything. Call the commander. Call the commander.
Give me your hand. Give me your hand.
I got my prescription glasses.
I don't care.
Eye surgery.
Put your hand behind your back.
Wait a minute, let me get my
You're going to get sprayed again.
glasses out my hand.
Yeah, man. My baby, you all right?
No.
Let me get 902.
He put me to the ground. He put his knee in my...
Get up.
Oh, you going to I can't. Oh, yeah, now you mad because I put it on YouTube Live and they saying everything.
Let's go.
That's why you mad.
Let's go. Stop fighting.
I'm not fighting. I can't say my
Listen to what I have to say.
So, yeah, like this is a classic resist. I mean, she doesn't agree with it, and he doesn't agree with it. Therefore, they're going to try this out instead of try it in a court of law. And there's also some entitlement that has come from the George Floyd era, we'll call it, where they don't feel they have to comply with anything, and this is what happens. And unfortunately, this officer's probably going to be. This officer's probably going to be.
I have more lawyer friends. You have a law degree. I have more lawyer friends than I do police friends. If you honestly think that the police officers are doing you wrong and they have illegally arrested you, just like you said, Drew, the place to fight that is in court, not on the street with the police officer. If it is a true case of police brutality where your civil rights are violated, attorneys are literally going to fight over each other in order to represent you.
That's where the money is. Like, it's not in the you punch me in the face cases necessarily. So according to the manual of policy and procedures, reportable use of force categories for LA Sheriff's Department, they have a very robust website when it comes to transparency. I'll give them kudos for that. You can go on there. You can pull up their use of force policy. This is considered, they have hobbling or searching and handcuffing, resisted firm grip or controls or come-alongs. Then they have category 1 force, which are takedowns, use of OC spray. They have category 2, which is anything with an identifiable injury. And also category 3, which is all shootings, which a shot was intentionally fired by a person. So obviously those are going to be your bigger cases. This is a category 1 use of force. They did the use of force investigation, and whatever happened. It's just that the cell phone video emerged after the fact, and the sheriff felt he needed to take action. Anyone agree?
I completely agree. I always have like a radically different take than you, Drew. I mean, this is because I'm not a cop, but I honestly, as just a citizen, I get so tired of this stuff. If you want a trial by combat in the street, then I guess what you get. And sometimes that means you get a good police officer. Sometimes it means you get a bad police officer. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have accountability for police officers. But there again, why are you deciding I'm going to settle this issue here in the streets? We've seen so many uses of force in which, people are ultimately killed. Those people never got their day in court. You have civil rights. Being arrested really isn't a big deal, particularly if you're not going to be in jail for a long time. If you feel like you've been done wrong, like these guys said, just comply. If you haven't been read your Miranda rights, it seems like you may not know what they are. So just keep silent. And when your lawyer gets there, just get ready to have a field day. I wish these guys had the mentality that, I'm going to look like the innocent victim because these police are roughing me up and I'm just being calm and quiet, because then at least they'd be less of a pain in the ass during the whole process. Drew.
So at the end of this, they were charged with resisting. I think they were both charged with resisting arrest. He was charged with petty theft. She was charged with assaulting an officer inside the Winco, which is probably some type of loss prevention officer. So let's take a look at what the community says about this is where we definitely have a problem.
Use by a sheriff's deputy. They see this as systemic mistreatment involving local businesses too. Something.
Okay, first of all, this is from KTLA. We're obviously going to add commentary to what they're doing to this robust news report. Very well done. I want you to take note. The people listening probably can hear it, but he's talking about criminal activity, and there are about 10 burglar alarms going off right behind him.
They say has been going on for years, and this use of force, just the latest example.
So in my estimation, there's about 30 people. They're all walking with signs, cell phones raised, yelling. There's a megaphone involved. They're yelling. They're just yelling, "No justice." It's a call and answer. No peace. It's the cry of the police brutality movement and or anti-police brutality movement, and they are entering the Winco where this occurred. Now, this is we'll talk about this in a second.
Angry protesters march into a Lancaster grocery store demanding changes in its policy and procedures dealing with suspected shoplifting.
Okay, so what you don't see is the flood of people taking over this store. 20 or 30 people bum rushing a shopping store, a grocery store, is daunting to some of the people in there, including the elderly people of the community, if they're so concerned about the elderly. And these people are characterized by the very same news media as angry protesters walking into the store. And they're yelling, "No justice, no peace." They basically take the store over. It caused the store to close early. They did the same thing. They came back the next day and did the same thing. Like somehow this is going to get the most attention. And Daniel, they said they're doing this in the name of getting the store to change their policy. And I mean, do you find that interesting?
Yeah, I find it interesting because I think the store definitely has a racist policy of not allowing shoplifting.
That's my point. Like, what do you mean get the store to change their policy? Should we just let people just pour in and pour out, take whatever they want in the open, and then punch the clerk? Or when somebody asks them a question, like, what policy do you want us to change, for God's sakes? You know, how about we change something in the policy of the community where stealing is illegal? Oh, wait, we have a statute for that. Why don't we just enforce that one?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing has all of the logic of let's burn down the Wendy's because there was a use of force in the parking lot that we don't like.
Right. John, do you have something?
Just that these stores are very likely to kowtow to that, or kowtow to it, however you pronounce it. I know that when I was in loss prevention, it's actually a very political thing. When you're looking at someone, hear me out, even a long time ago, this is 20 years ago that we were doing loss prevention. If we had somebody in the store who was shoplifting, and it would be a bad look for us to go and do a citizen's arrest on them or apprehend them, we did not do it. There would be people who were coming in the store. I'm talking about young girls who would steal women's clothing. There would be certain people who were overtly part of a religious sect or something, and they would come in and they would rip us off blind, people in wheelchairs, things like that. We would not go after these people because it would look bad to do so. And now these stores are being met with mobs who are saying, don't report anyone for shoplifting, or somehow we're going to have to, discreetly handle this. Like Daniel was saying earlier, basically just record them leaving the scene with merchandise unpaid for concealed in their person, get their license plate, and hope that a police officer later, can encounter them and somehow resolve this theft rather than being more proactive about it. And these stores are going to bow to that because, unfortunately, their image, just take a look at Target, the way that Target has changed. Target used to have a very, very, very pro-police attitude. Target actually used to have a forensic lab just outside of Minneapolis that was state of the art. And when crimes occurred at Target, a lot of times those crimes would actually be investigated at the state of the art forensics lab. And they would lend out these services to police departments. I guarantee you, since George Floyd, those services probably no longer exist and they're not being lent out to police departments. Drew.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize how much organized retail theft is a problem in your community, and that it is kind of the root of a lot of the crime numbers that you see. Like if crime is increasing, it's probably because of the thefts, the shoplifts, and also just the organizations that are committing it. They're coming from a certain area, committing all these thefts and leaving and going back to the certain areas. So it's not even the geography of it's not even people from Lancaster that are committing these crimes. I don't know where these two people are from, but it seems to me that California has an Olympic level of shoplifting. I mean, San Francisco is losing all of their anchor stores in these plazas because nobody wants to do business there anymore. You can't talk to the people that are in there stealing. You see the videos. I mean, it's not, I don't think they're picking and choosing that. It's any more than the media picks and chooses, police use of force investigations. Daniel, do you have anything?
No, just, I mean, John, you are completely correct that the store basically has to bow down to exactly what these maniacs want, because if not, the store is going to get burned to the ground. No longer is the mafia showing up saying, it'd be a shame if something happened to the store. It comes in the form of Ben Crump.
That's true. That's a great analogy.
That's an excellent analogy. I love that, actually.
I want you to remember what you just witnessed, though, on the video, where the group of, say, 30 people with signs and bullhorns walked in to the store and pretty much shut the place down, struck fear in all the patrons' hearts, because here's the explanation of what they wanted to do.
There to have a conversation with the management.
Manager's assistant, or you couldn't just stop at the customer service counter and say, hey, can we discuss this? I mean, you had to come 30 deep with bullhorns, black fists raised, signs. By the way, the signs we'll see when they turn around say as her fist raised. And you can see the guy in the center, who is, I think, the same guy that was just on there saying, no, we just went in there to have a conversation. He's on his bullhorn and he's screaming to the people that are walking towards him in the back of the store. They're just there to disrupt. Did you guys disrupt and intimidate?
Did you guys ever see that old meme where there's a guy standing with a sign and it just says, I'm just here for the violence? That used to be a joke. And now here it is, where we have a shoplifting incident. Winco didn't do anything wrong other than try to protect their assets. The police show up. The community is outraged about it. Okay, we'll go down to City Hall, go down to the police station. And now we've got guys basically holding up de facto, I'm just here for the violent signs here at a grocery store. I feel so bad for those poor employees just trying to make, $12 an hour.
All right. So
fled the store as the marchers came in.
Some of the employees had to flee the store as the marchers came in.
And management quickly closed it early.
Oh, no!
Get down on the ground. It all stems from this video of the sheriff's deputy's use of force June 24th in the store's parking lot. Those employees called 911.
What's going on, dude?
Responding deputies spotted. Then one deputy spots the female suspect nearby recording the encounter and moves to her.
Stop. You can't touch me.
At one point during the struggle, the deputy pepper sprays. News conference today, saying an investigation into the use of force has already begun, and the Justice Department and the State Attorney General notified.
It's a bummer to see it. I always think we can do better, but again, I don't know all the facts. There's a lot to this, so I ask for the community's patience to allow us to look at this objectively and figure out exactly what happened.
Both of the deputies involved in the incident have already been removed from street patrol. The suspect couple has been charged with attempted petty theft and battery on store employees. And the sheriff told us today that he plans on holding a community meeting here in Lancaster sometime next week. That's in the process of being set up. Meanwhile, the protesters say they plan on being back at this store tomorrow. In Lancaster, I'm Rick Chambers. Guys, I'll throw it back to you in Hollywood.
Thank you, Rick. So that was from KTLA report. Obviously, we're adding our own commentary on top of it. But listen, I mean, they even for what? In what? Let's call this what it is here, because those were mainly Black people in there saying that the Black community, it's the news saying that the Black community is living in fear over these deputy sheriffs. And it's the Black community marching in there trying to get them to change their policy for what? To ease the rules for Black people to commit crime. This is not an advancement. This is not, you're not advancing any cause by doing this. So what they're basically saying is we need to make it easier for them to commit crime. Therefore, there will be no police interaction because they're in danger when they're interacting. Well, you know what? You're in danger if you're running down the middle of the highway, but you don't have to run down the middle of the highway. No one's making you do that. That's a decision you're making, guys.
I couldn't agree more, Drew. It's just preposterous what's going on out there. We're talking about one situation, but really this is the situation that's systemic, and this is what's kind of crumbling Western jurisprudence. The idea that just a mob's going to show up and demand action from a store, and the sheriff's going to get on the TV. And we were asking for patience from the community. Code, please don't start fires. It just to me, it just seemed very weak and pathetic. Rather than saying we're going to investigate this and then popping out, you're basically begging people, not to have a mob. It's pathetic.
Daniel.
One of the reasons why I typically like the sheriff model more than the chief of police model is because they have the ability to be honest. They're not answering to a mayor. They're not answering to a city council. If they say something, they're not going to get fired. So typically because of that, I expect more from sheriffs, and I would expect a better response than he gave.
All right, I am so on the fence about this Sheriff Luna. He was the chief of police of Long Beach PD before he ran for sheriff. I happen to have been a fan of Alex Villanueva, who was the sheriff before him. I for some reason am fascinated with LA in California law enforcement, because my heart breaks for those guys, like men and women out there. They're out there doing a job, and they're up against community, and they're up against leadership, and they're up against, they're just up against people that have like ideals that are not in this world, in this realm. So I always, I try to kind of keep up with California law enforcement. Sheriff Villanueva was doing well. He was a Democrat. He was one of the few Democrats in this world that I liked. I mean, spoiler alert. But he was doing well, in my opinion, but they voted him out in favor of this Sheriff Luna, who's another Democrat who's going to do exactly what they say. He's going to toe the party line. And I'm telling you that I'm on the fence about this, because there was a press conference he held last night that I watched where they're investigating a use of force that took place last year before he became sheriff. And if you haven't seen the body camera, it's going to be the next big thing. If you haven't seen the body camera, he released the body camera video. Then he did his press conference. And then he said, hey, guys, just so you'll know, this occurred last July, and we're going to do a big investigation about this. We've already turned it over to the DA's office, and we've turned it over to the U.S. Attorney's office. And I think some of that is because they're under a consent decree. And I do understand that as an administrator or as a sheriff or whatever, you do owe the public some transparency. You want to be able to show that you are willing and trying to weed out the bad cops. However, you got to find bad cops first. You can't just pick and choose things that look bad and make them bad, unless you're picking and choosing things that look bad that everybody says are bad, knowing that they're probably going to be dispatched. You know what I mean? They're probably going to be dealt with in a way that like no jury is going to indict this guy, but I don't think that that's the case on this thing. If you haven't seen the one from last night, it was from July of 2022. It was drunk people in a car. They stopped the car. The guy didn't have a valid license that was driving. Everybody else in the car was drunk, and there were 3 babies, like infants, in the back seat. None of the babies were in a car seat. Everybody was going to jail because of the endangerment of the children. And, one mother is very like a teen mom, sitting down on the ground, not going to give up her baby without a fight. And eventually they got the baby away safely, put her in handcuffs, and they went to this other woman who was doing the exact same thing, except she was standing, and she's saying, over my dead body, are you taking this baby? You're not taking this baby. And they're telling her, we're taking you to jail. Like, that's just how it goes. You're not thinking of the baby's safety when you're drunk in this car with. So what happens is there a struggle ensues over this baby. You can hear them very clearly, 3 or 4 of them saying, "Let go of the baby," and you just see somebody on the somebody walk around the other side and throw 2 haymakers. So what the sheriff is now alleging and what he's saying is it's disturbing to him because this woman was holding a baby and she got punched in the face, and it excuses her conduct of holding the baby in her lap while she's drunk, partying in a car with a guy with an unlicensed driver, and everybody's drunk, and the 3 infants are put in danger. Like it dismisses all of that behavior. It puts the focus on, did the cop commit the crime here? And this is why I say you're losing them. You're losing cops when you do this. Like, I do understand that you have to be transparent. I do understand that you have to look into these things, and you have to. It's a tough job. Like, we can play the presser that he did for the Winco case. He essentially is saying the same thing. Like, look, I know this looks bad, but I don't know all the facts in this. So let's just slow down and let's get all the facts. In this other case, he's saying, what I saw is pretty bad. I'm disturbed by it. I can't even talk about what the discipline is because the state law says I can't. I've turned it over to the DA's office. He's basically saying, I hope this guy gets charged because I don't want to deal with him anymore. And I think this is the problem in the profession. Daniel?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everything you said, I agree with 100%. I haven't seen the case that you're referencing, but I'll definitely check it out.
I'll send you some links when we get out of here. I was going to play part of the sheriff's press conference, but I don't think. I mean, I'll play the first couple minutes. I mean, he's earnest in the sense that I think he really is probably trying to turn things around. Though there are people probably in that community that are saying you don't need to turn the police around. You need to turn the community around.
It just seems like something we repeat, but I want to make it clear to all of our community that this investigation is to objectively, and I do repeat, objectively determine if the force used was reasonable, if it was necessary, if it was appropriate and proportional to the level of actions that were described. And of course, that's from the deputy's perspective, what happened in the store, all those things that are being investigated. I am also committed to full transparency, and this is why I decided to release the store video on Monday night with our statement.
All right. So you'll know, state of California, I think, has 45 days to release the body cam, and he released it within 15 or 20. So, I mean, he's okay. Thanks. But you know what I mean? I can't just knock the guy without at least acknowledging that he's saying the right things in the sense that we're trying to look at this objectively. He's saying things directly out of his own directives, by the way. Like, was the force reasonable? Was it, commensurate with what the officer was experiencing at the moment? He's saying things that are directly out of his policy. And to me, that those are indicators of exactly what he's going to find, what he's hoping that will be found with this officer. That's just my opinion. Anybody else?
I think you got it.
John, do you have any voicemails?
We do. We should also get Daniel back on here to discuss that case out of Colorado where the guy stole the police car and went in hot pursuit and then he died. I mean, there's no 911 aspect to that, but I mean, hot damn, what a case.
I'm sure there's radio. There probably is some great radio traffic about how you're going to stop one of your own cars and how you're going to identify it. I bet you there's some great radio traffic over there.
Yeah, the car was just one day away from retirement. That was the real shame. We actually have an interesting voicemail. I'm so glad that Daniel's here because do you remember, I want to take you back a couple weeks. I want you to forget the shark episode ever happened. That's when we jumped the shark, was the shark episode. But do you remember when you and I used to fight over a lanai? We had our first voicemail who called in. They wanted to talk about the case where the colonel up inside his house saw the pool boy out on his lanai and just went full platoon on him and killed the pool boy in cold blood, as some of us may remember the case. I'm going to play the voicemail here. So he's got a good question for you, use of force detectives. Here we go.
Hey, this is Cody from Florida. I had a question for you. I just finished listening to the shooting with the lanai in it, and I had a thought. what would happen if the colonel, instead of waiting for something to happen, actually went out to meet the pool boy with his rifle? Figured that might be a good topic to stick around there. Guns up, giddy up. Have a good one, y'all.
Well, first of all, the sheriff addressed that. And actually, let's back up. First of all, he was a lieutenant colonel. Second of all, the sheriff did address that. The sheriff, Sheriff Galtieri, addressed that. He's like, look, we're not going to sit here and encourage people to run out onto their lanais with guns and confront people. You have a right to defend your domicile, your home. Your home is your castle, and you can defend it. I know that. I think the sheriff's direct quote was, "I know that John from Com Center completely disagrees with this notion, but it's a fact." And I do see your point, caller, though you're just a voicemail, where probably confronting and where you go out there and say, "Go on, get." They're probably going to get out of there, especially if you're holding some type of M16, whatever he had. But that's not what happened. And I get your point. That's definitely something to take into consideration for the rest of the people. But the sheriff addressed that.
The other thing that's interesting about it is since we have identified the lanai as already being part of the curtilage, the burglar was, the poor pool boy was already inside the curtilage. So he fired through the sliding glass door into his curtilage, and with an AR-15, surely points beyond that. We don't know what the backstop was, but he didn't discover the guy until he was already inside. Now, if he had gone outside and seen the pool boy in the lawn and lit him up, Daniel, how does castle doctrine change once you come out of your curtilage? You see a pool boy in the lawn, you've got an AR-15 in your hand, and you shoot him. What is that justified in your mind?
No, that's not justified. And again, this isn't what happened. But had he gone outside and had a conversation or seen what the guy was up to, he would have seen that it was a pool boy, and we wouldn't be talking about the case.
That's very succinct. I love it.
Your home is your castle. It's not necessarily that your lawn is your home, right?
I don't know if we're going to just throw a lanai in there. I guess anything's fair game.
Well, the Golden Girls.
We have, yes, sir. As my sister listening, she'll I don't know if she gets that joke, but the Golden Girls being a favorite TV show. We just have one left, and then we'll wrap it up, Drew. I'll go ahead and play it. Here it comes now. On to the show.
I'm just calling in for a comms check. Mic click. Just first time caller, long time listener. Love y'all.
That's it. He just wanted to say that he loves us. So thanks,
I love
guy
him.
Who loves us. Yep. You didn't say your name or anything. Glad you called.
I can guarantee I love him.
Also, thanks to Cody, you couldn't help but notice that he was in Florida, and he was perhaps looking for legal advice on when and where he could shoot people in and around his lanai. As we said in the Canadian episode, it's like this is absolutely typical American behavior. We just we shoot up the pool boy. Once again, I wanted to say to poor Mark Polak or whatever his name was, thank you for your pool service.
Thank you for your pool service. So I think that because we have a law school graduate in our midst, we should probably say, I hope that he wasn't calling us looking for legal advice like in the moat. Like he's like, can I get out onto the lanai and point my gun at that? Because listen, guys, call 911 if that's the case. This is what we need you to do.
Daniel, where can we find you on social media? Because you got a whole bunch of stuff going on. I saw your link tree today. I saw your OnlyFans, and I did not click on that. But you got a whole bunch of stuff, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can follow me pretty much everywhere over at Police Law News. And I hope people do that. But even more importantly, what I hope people do is subscribe to this show and share it with your friends. And it'd be silly for me to not also mention On Being a Police Officer. It was listening to On Being a Police Officer where I first heard Drew Breezy on there. And that's when I knew that we were going to be lifelong friends. And that's kind of how I found you in the show. And yeah, I just want to say, please hope everyone follows them there. And yeah, I'm over at Police Law News everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you for sitting in with us, my friend. John, as usual, stick around when we leave. Definitely.
Everyone stick around.
Have
Daniel,
words.
you also stick around.
Daniel, stick around so you can hear this. I don't want to embarrass John too bad in front of our guests, but
I get
listen,
chastised after the show. Yeah.
on behalf of all of us, thank you for being here. You are our bread and butter, and we love you.